Who will bring me to this fortified city? Who will lead me to Edom? Is it not you, God, you who have rejected us and no longer go out with our enemies? These are words from Psalm 108. I know that we don't speak the same kinds of words today as we approach God and pray to Him, and as we struggle through some of the difficulties that we face in day-to-day living. But nevertheless, these words poetically might express some of the struggles you at some point might have had, or perhaps are having even now as I speak. I can think of my own experience in my walk with Christ. There have been times when it seems like that even though I believe in God and I trust in Him, even though I have faith that He is in control and that somehow, some way things will work out, that there's a tension in which I don't understand why He's not actively involved, it seems, in the details of my life. And I wonder, even as I pray and try to hold on, why are you taking so long? And I think that the scriptures direct us to realize that we live in a tension. We believers in Jesus Christ, we can trust in Him. We know His purposes. We know God's in control. And even as the Psalms express, we know that God's kingdom will prevail. We still live in that in between of the already and not yet. And Psalm 108 expresses a little bit of that tension as the writer recognizes that God will prevail, and yet at the same time, he's holding on and wondering, will he prevail? David expresses that tension by pointing out to the Lord that his heart is steadfast, it is faithful and true, and he trusts in God's love and faithfulness. It's not that love is one aspect of God's character and faithfulness is another. It's that they're one and the same package, and that particularly shines through as God reveals himself to the people of Israel, expressed through his covenant with them. And as I reflect upon these words of David, I realize that I can't pray them honestly. And if we are all honest as believers in Jesus Christ, I don't know that we really could. My heart, God, is steadfast. Well, that seems like a pretty self-righteous statement if you think about it. And there's only one person who could really pray that with complete integrity and truthfulness, and that is Jesus Christ, the Messiah. And so David not only makes a commitment to worship in view of God's love, as he expresses in the first 5 verses of Psalm 108, but he petitions God for help in view of his sovereignty. God has spoken from a sanctuary, David says. So this is David's assurance. He knows that it is on the basis of God and what he can speak that his purposes will come true in his life. And this is God's, or rather David's assurance. And all of these lands that David mentions in this psalm are lands surrounding and including the promised land. So David is assured, based on God's love and faithfulness, that he will be true to his covenant and eventually will measure out all these pieces of land for his people that he has chosen to be a witness and a worshiping community to the entire world. David's prayer is amazing. Give us aid against the enemy, for human help is worthless. With God, we will gain the victory, and he will trample down our enemies. And so David's commitment, his petition, and his assurance all look forward to Messiah Jesus, because only Messiah Jesus could pray with such confidence. Believers in Jesus Christ, we can pray with such confidence, perhaps not to the same extent, perhaps not to the same faithfulness, but is because of what Jesus has accomplished for those who have put their faith in him, that any believer can trust in him, can trust in God's overall purposes, which are greater than our own. Although the prayer that John records as expressed in John chapter 17 is not a direct allusion or quotation or even reference to Psalm 108, it does show how Jesus Christ himself stood for his followers and asked God to protect them, to guide them, to bring them to the place, the point of purity to the point of sanctification. And so Jesus tells the Father, expresses to the Father that he has carried out his mission and now holds on to the Father to complete that mission. And so I come back to the original question: who will bring me to the fortified city? Who will lead me to Edom? I love David's answer: give us aid against the enemy, for the human help is worthless. With God, we will gain the victory, and he will trample down our enemies. This is the prayer that we can pray that expresses Jesus's heart himself as we live in this tension between, yes, I do believe, and man, is it tough to hold on.